they science fact or fiction? So and Alaya, when you were referring to dealing with the political, like real world parallels, I was wondering if you guys had real world parallels that like aren't intentionally placed into the books? Because I could see some, but I wasn't sure if they were on purpose or if they just like arise naturally from the narrative that you've set up. And I'm always interested in that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just totally punch me for asking that.
Ooh, it's definitely a homework kind of question. But I definitely was riffing on modern problems. Like I kind of feel like that's what science fiction does best. So especially social science fiction, it's not like super deep futures. So, you know, there's a strong influence of the legacy of slavery in that book that is, you know, very explicitly there. And I think, you know, I had some extremely the first draft didn't make that much sense anyway, so I kind of can forgive them who wrote me these questions like, it seems like these characters are preoccupied with slavery and race. Was that a thing in this world? And I was like, Brazil? So, yeah, like it's definitely our world, and it's definitely, you know, it's in the future, but it's dealing with things that we're still dealing with. And so so I was taking the trends like people are living longer and longer, and there's more technologies on the horizon that are going to make people able to live longer, and that's great, but it also means, can you imagine being 17 in a world where the adults are 200? Like, that is going to make you take a lot longer to make anyone take you seriously, and so that's a huge like element of the book. So and it's not like we don't have this issue where we're very talented 17-year-olds who might 200, 300 years ago have just been considered adults and respected as such for their accomplishments are now kind of like, oh, that's so nice of you, why don't you come back to me when you're 30? Like, it's just that it's more extreme. And so like I was doing that with a bunch of issues like technology and differential access to technology from the different classes in the society. You know, it's a matriarchal society, so women have much more privilege than they do in our society, but it's not like a straight up flip either. So there are those things I'm playing with, but I like being able to make them different so that you can look at them, like, you know, kind of warping them, just so you can look at the kind of the thing that genre does so well is that because you can warp our own reality, it makes it almost easier to look at it sometimes.
Yeah, I think twisting it through the looking glass is kind of the point of a lot of our stories. Just, I think it's easier to see today's problems when you see it in such an exaggerated form. I mean, there were definitely some things that I didn't intend to put in that some readers will email me. They're like, did you really mean this? I'm like, I totally did that on purpose. Thought of that all on my own. There's definitely a few of those, but a lot of it was intentional because one of the most common things I get asked is, like, do you think that the world can ever be like this? Do you think this can actually happen? And I'm like, well, it's happened already. Like nothing in the Legend series is made up. It's all real. You know, everything that's happened in these countries has happened in the past. There's a specific scene about 2/3 of the way through the book where there's soldiers on the roof and they're shooting down at a crowd in a square, and I'm like, that was Tiananmen Square. It was completely inspired by that, and it was interesting to me because I was growing up in Beijing when that event happened in China, and it was interesting seeing it from the inside, because from the inside you kind of see it as it looks totally different from when you're outside of the country and how the media portrays it on the outside versus how you are being told it happened on the inside. It's two totally different things. And I always thought that was interesting because when you're living in a dystopia, it's hard to tell that you're in a dystopia because you think everything is normal. There's no point of reference unless you go outside of your country. So that was something that I wanted to include in all of the things that happen in Legend, and it's all pulled from real life, from the eugenics movement in the 20th century when people thought it was perfectly okay to throw girls into insane asylums for reading too much. Like, that was a thing that happened and people thought it was normal. The Japanese internment camps and the Holocaust, like, these are all things that happened and are still happening now. So I just think that's interesting that we've sort of normalized that, and that's actually our own dystopia. So.
For me, I think I started on a smaller scale with just an examination of power, like personal power, because I took Amy is my protagonist, and she's being bullied at school, and then when she gets to this land, she's being bullied on a much larger scale. And I think my idea was mainly about what happens when you get power, when you haven't had power, and I wanted to explore that through Dorothy and also through Amy, and Dorothy's power takes over all Oz. And now that Amy's gaining power, she wonders what it will corrupt her as well as it did Dorothy. So.
I think we were going to take some questions. I feel like there was a plan for that. There you go. Rose here to save the day. I mean, I could talk more. Okay. Thank you. So organized. I know. This is Nicole Melian? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nicole. Yeah. Okay. What is it that draws you to the genre of fantasy and sci-fi as opposed to other genres?
For me, I've written a lot of different types of things, and what I like about it, I do like that extreme. I like that you have witches and magic, and you can see things on that grand of a scale. And I used to write a lot smaller. I started in soaps where it was all about bitch slapping and what did John do and all that stuff. But I like it. I like the scale of it.
Yeah, I like that too. Just like the idea that, and also the idea that you can just do anything.
Yeah.
Which can be kind of scary too, because I forget sometimes, like, you get super excited about writing a fantasy and sci-fi, and it's like, I'm God, I can do anything. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm God. Everything has to make sense. You have to do everything. So, yeah, it's scary and fun, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just the extremes of what you can do is really nice.
Yeah.
I think genre can be a little like a drug. Like, you just get hooked early and you can't get off of it. I started reading Diana Wynne Jones when I was like 7 or 8 or something, and I swear I've never been able to write another thing since. So I don't know. I think it's changed my brain, because sometimes I think, like, I'm going to write a contemporary novel, and I can't, so I put a global flu pandemic in it because I just need something else.
That I had an idea for something contemporary, and I was like, how can I put aliens in it? Can there be aliens? Or time
Everything's
travel?
better.
It's like if nothing explodes in 300 pages, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I actually don't know how to write a plot without explosions. Well, I guess there aren't that many explosions, but you know what I mean. Or
If you get stuck in your story, you're just like, suddenly an explosion. And everything's good again.
but really, he was a clone. Yeah, Orphan Black. Hey.
Woo! It's my show.
Kristen Canoe. Yes? I'm going to be terrible at this, guys. Okay, how do parental/authority figures fit into coming-of-age stories or lives of revolutionist protagonists?
For me, Amy, my protagonist, her mom has addiction issues and is not very present, and her father is also not in the picture. So she's very much, it's helped shape who she is. She's very independent and very much alone, and that's how she sets out on the yellow brick road. She's never had friends or family, and so I think that shaped her, and she's got kind of the opposite situation from Dorothy, who had they're not her parents, but had parental figures that were so important to her. So I really wanted it to be different.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I guess it's the hallmark of just children's literature in general. Like, parents tend to be a little bit absent, but I think they're still so important to the foundation of who your character is. So in the Legend series, the parents are present, sort of, but then I don't want to give anything away. Wait, what can I say? They're also very absent in some ways, but they play a huge part in how the main characters grow up. And for June, her main parental figure is her older brother, and she learns everything from him. And I think the fact that both Day and June started off with really strong, good families, it really defines them as the people. It shaped their personalities throughout the entire story and oriented all of their decisions throughout the story. So even though they live in super, super dark worlds, they're good people at heart. You know, they tend to make the right decisions and do the right thing. And that's all because of their parental figures and what they've been taught and what they've learned for their lives. So I think in the story, like they are sort of trying to step into the figures that they once knew.
In The Summer Prince, and also in my forthcoming YA, Love is the Drug, the relationship between the main character and their parents is incredibly important. It's probably like the second most important relationship in each of those stories is the relationship with their parents. And I have a friend who writes mostly adult and just wrote her first YA novel. And the thing that she told me that I thought was really interesting was that in adult, she had this problem where like the relationship with their parents was really important, but it had happened like 10 or 15 years ago. Like all that kind of trauma, all those major events had happened when they were teenagers. And so she kept having to do all these weird flashbacks and all these tricks to try to get that stuff into the modern story. But in YA, it was actually happening in real time, and it was such a relief to be able to deal with those parental issues at the same time as all the other stuff in the story. And so I never thought of it like that, and I was like impressed with that distillation of why it works so well, I think. And I think that's probably the reason why I haven't had super absent parents, because to me one of the things that's kind of amazing about YA is really being able to dig into those parental relationships that kind of follow you the rest of your life.
Yeah, it was such a huge part of Summer Prince, her relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
The resentment that she has, and you can see as the reader that you're like, why are you so resentful of this person? But it's so real, and it's what makes her, I don't know, relatable. So
Yeah.
I liked it. Sorry, I'm just gonna sit here.
I love my parents, by the way, really.
Maybe that's why it's fun to get rid of them. Okay, so Shannon. Okay, you help.
I'm gonna try. Okay. No? What do you guys think? You gotta be here.
If you weren't an author, what would you be?
You mean there are other jobs?
And we have like infinite skills and we can actually do anything.
Yeah, is this like a superpower question or no? I honestly have never wanted to do anything else. I wanted to write since I was like 5 years old. I remember writing one of those little wallpaper like bound books that you do when you're in first grade, and that was it for me. It's like that's it, I'm done. So I've never had I didn't want to be a fireman or an actress or anything. It's just this.
Well, why did you switch from TV writing to YA writing or book writing?
Well, soaps are getting canceled. When I first started writing soaps, I got just out of college, and it was my first job, and I loved it, and it was a great big world of 11 shows, and now there's 4. And as they started to shrink, I started to think about what else I wanted to do, and I always did want to write a book, and it gave me the opportunity to it kicked me out of this nest that I loved, and put me somewhere that I was supposed to be.